Hello and welcome to today's T&D World webinar. This one is titled From the Field to the Corner Office, Leadership Lessons from Ameren, Illinois. And this is brought to you by PDI Squared, the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative. I'm Jeff Postlethwaite, Senior Editor for T&D World. And just to get us kicked off, I want to explain how you can participate in today's presentation because your participation is what makes these so much fun. If you have technical problems, just submit those in the questions window and our experts will help you out. We do recommend that you disable any pop-up blocking software, extensions, things like that in your browser, because those can sometimes cause issues. And we do want to get your questions to today's event. We will answer as many of those as we have time for during the Q&A session to follow, but you do not have to wait for that. Please feel free to send in your questions at any time. Just type them into the question window on the side of your screen and hit submit. And to refer a colleague to today's discussion or share it on social media or access event resources, there are icons for that on the left side rail of your screen. To resize your window for a better view, just click the upper right hand corner of your screen to enlarge it. And please be aware that our session today is being recorded and will be available on the T&D World website within the next day or so, and we will hit you up with an email when that happens. So without all that out of the way, we'll get to today's speaker. Today we have Mike Beeler, National Spokesperson for the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative, and we also have Patrick Smith Sr., President and Chairman of Ameren, Illinois, and we have Laren Evans, who is Principal and Senior Partners Director of T&D for Burns & McDonnell. So thank you for joining us, and I'll hand it off to you three.
Well, thanks a lot, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Really excited about today's conversation. And it will be a conversation with Patrick Smith and LaRon Evans at Burns & McDonnell. And I just want to say briefly that this is brought to you by the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative. What is PDI Squared? We're a group of contractors and consultants that advocate for underground. We want planners and engineers, and today even data scientists, to look at underground as a viable alternative when putting in a new distribution line or even a transmission line. So what does today's conversation have to do with underground? Probably not a lot, but it definitely has a lot to do with the young men and women, the next generation of engineers that will be building the infrastructure, overhead and underground, for us in the years to come. We've got such a great, compelling story from Patrick Smith today. So Ron Evans is going to have this conversation. Burns & McDonnell is a board member at PDI Squared. And so Ron, just give us a quick hello, and then we'll have Patrick do the same, and then we'll launch into it. But Ron Evans, give the audience a hello if you would.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Ron Evans, again, appreciate the brief intro from Mike. I'm the Strategic Partners Director for the Transmission and Distribution Group at Burns & McDonnell. Excited to have this conversation with a good friend I've been knowing for a while now in the energy industry. And so my background is substation engineering, but I've certainly gotten a lot of experience with transmission and just really all things power delivery, not fully on the design side, but exposed enough to appreciate the work that we do in the industry. And so I am married for 13 years in a couple of weeks, Patrick. And so my daughter is 19 years old and went to Iowa State University, majoring in electrical engineering. And so this has been the work I love. I love the engineering. I love the energy industry. But also appreciate good friendships like the one we have. So if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, and then
yeah. Appreciate it, and really love hearing your story. I know you well. I think you've always brought a lot of flavor to the industry, and I enjoyed it. They say sometimes energy delivery, power generation can be a bit boring, and you've never been anything but that, and a good friend. So happy to be here today with you to share my journey, and I'll talk more in detail about me. But I've been in the industry over 4 decades, and from East St. Louis, Illinois. I'm married as well. My wife, Crystal, works in the organization, and she's been here a few years. I won't date her, but looking forward to having a great conversation, LaRon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Mike, back to you.
Likewise, this is going to be a conversation. So, audience, you can throw your questions in. We've got these two gentlemen that are going to talk here, and send us your questions. But we've got some great questions for Patrick. I mean, I saw Patrick at the IEEE Chicago, and he had been introduced, and they introduced him as saying he started off as a meter reader on the craft side of the business and worked his way all the way up to president. And I walked up to him afterwards. I said, "Really?" I said, "That is a great story, and I think that the industry absolutely needs to hear it." So, Ron, I'm really excited that you're going to lead this conversation with Patrick. And Patrick, take it away. You got a couple of slides just to give us a little bit about your background, and then we're going to just chat. So, Patrick, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I like to show these slides when I'm talking, and I think about just giving folks context. And I've had a number of jobs with the corporation, so I've had a long career, but it's mainly been with Ameren, formerly Union Electric. And as you see, I started with as a meter reader, and quickly moved into a role as apprentice lineman. And so that was my next fun job, and learned a lot about the grid, and even the conversations I have today about just the regulatory matters, legislative matters, and thinking and talking about the grid and some of the stakeholders and some of the legislators, governors, and other regulators. When I talk about it, I think I'm talking from a position of a higher level of credibility in some aspects. I've hung off the poles, I've been in the ditches, I've been on the towers, I've been in the ice storms, and I understand the complexity associated with bringing people this power. So I think my career has really served me well. I wouldn't change my journey for anything, but it wouldn't be anything. And I move on to that next slide. You think about, why you get up and go to work. I got my mom and dad in there. Got a one of those 70s picture, one of those old 70s movies, and but man, they you'll hear them pop up a little bit in my conversation. My wife is in there, and in my entire family, extended family, and daughter married with 2 kids now, and they're over there to the right. Just came off of a Walt Disney cruise that they drugged me along, but then they had to almost drag me off the ship. I was so excited about seeing them being excited. So those are things I think about often when I'm in my office working, making decisions on matters of energy and business, and powering the quality of life for millions in the state of Illinois. But another passion of mine you see represented on there is basketball. I coach my son, pretty good AAU team, and then my daughter. I learned a lot about dance. I know first position, second position, and all of that by following her around. She competed in dance, and she even danced at the University of Kentucky for 4 years. So that's a little bit about the why. Why I get up and why I do things, along with my, a lot of good friends that I've, gained over the years, and many of them right here from working.
Yeah. So if you can, kind of take us back to when you started as a meter reader. What brought you into the utility industry, beginning as a meter reader?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a glorious story, and like I'm sat down and really had the insight to say, hey, I think at some point I want to do this. But basically, I went to school, and that's how I spilled it all. I had a scholarship to what the name of the school now is Missouri S&T.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we just called it Rolla. It was a complex school, but there's some social challenges that I wasn't ready for then. It was different times then, But it's still all on me. I went there, had a scholarship. We had to keep a 3.0. LeRon, I didn't keep a 3.0. So over the summer, what followed me home was a letter telling me, don't come back.
Oh, that's mercy.
and I was like, man. I was like, what I'm going, and I hid this, with my parents. I really did. I said, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I said, I don't like it there. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I ended up going to junior college, and I did that for maybe 2 or 3 semesters. And I started seeing, folks I went to school with, and they were going to school and getting it done. And my confidence was shaking a bit. Like, can I even go to school and graduate and do these things? I mean, I honestly was asking myself those type of questions. And then I'm looking at peers and people I knew, and I said, hey, let me get back out here. And that's when I enrolled at SIU Carbondale. And one of the pledges I made to myself is that my parents would bear no financial responsibility from this point on because I had already messed up a lot of money. You know, I said, hey, I had a shot.
Right.
I messed it up. Now it's on me.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how, you know, I got to Carbondale. Did it one semester, LeRon, I'm turned around. I'm rehabilitated.
Recovery.
Yeah, recovery. I'm on the honor roll. I'm a mechanical engineering student. And but then I'm looking at this student loan debt that I'm amassing.
Yeah.
And I say, I need a job. So right before break, semester break over the winter, you know, getting ready to come on for summer, I started applying for, this is winter break. I started applying for jobs, and I applied at McDonald's, Burger King, Monsanto, Anheuser-Busch, and at the time we were called Union Electric. That was the name before Ameren.
Yeah.
Never heard back from McDonald's or Burger King.
Ain't that dumb?
Never heard back. Got a couple of nice letters from Monsanto, from Anheuser-Busch, and they said, hey, we just don't have anything. But Union Electric called me in over that summer and said, hey, take this test. And I did an interview, and the lady offered me the job. And I needed the money for school, but I didn't calculate that, hey, this was a grown man job. This is a full-time, you have to be here 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week job. I was like, I don't know. I said, ma'am, I just wanted summer work because I'm enrolled for 18 hours at SIU Carbondale. I can't take this job. She looked at me, just went silent. She looked at me. She got up. I mean, you could just hear her, you know, just 10 steps to the door, take just her heels, shut the door, slid her chair from behind her desk, sat down in her chair and grabbed my hand. She say, hon, you take this job.
Wow.
And then you go talk to your parents. Because once you walk out this door, I'm going to offer it to the next person.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And so 4 miles away, East St. Louis. I was born and raised in East St. Louis. I was in St. Louis. Went to the East St. Louis Police Department where my dad worked. Found him, head down, kicking rocks. Don't know how to tell him, hey, I'm thinking about leaving school to work. And I said, hey, I got to tell you something. He said, what? I said, I just took a job with Union Electric. And then I kind of sheepishly raised my eyes and looked at him. He's about 6'2", big dude.
Yeah. Grinning
ear to ear. Hey, LeRon, I don't forget what he said. He said, man, now you're out of my pocket. so it was just financial, man. I'm just trying to pay for school. But what I didn't calculate that, I can transfer.
Right.
So I transferred to Washington University. And the other benefit was that Union Electric at the time had tuition reimbursement. So I never had to take out a student loan.
Man.
But that was one of my first mentors that I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And, me and you talked, my definition of a good mentor is someone who can make a better decision for you, especially in the moment where it matters, than you can make for yourself.
Man.
In that 10 minutes that day, he changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow.
We're still friends today. Go to lunch every now and then.
Man, that is amazing.
Yes, sir.
She was a godsend.
Hey, on my path.
Yeah.
On my path. Yes, sir.
So okay, so man, that is an amazing entry story to the utility industry. I'm not going to say it's unmatched, but right now it's unmatched. I don't think it's a story out there as powerful, I would say, as that one, as well as, like you said, looking back and recognizing that she was a mentor in the moment, recognizing the benefit and really your circumstances and seeing the potential in you way back then. I think that is just amazing. So what then are some of the early lessons that you learned as a meter reader? And because at that point, I mean, look, you applied to jobs that the industries are different. I mean, you talking about retail or McDonald's, and then so you were trying to get paid. You were trying to get some money. Your father recognized that too. He realized once he knew where you were going to be working.
He was trying to get rid of a bill.
Yeah. Yeah. So you obviously then enter into the utility or the energy industry or the utility industry. and you're starting out as a meter reader, but you don't know what it is to be a meter reader. So then, what then are some? So you had to be a sponge at that time to learn what it takes to be a meter reader. So what are some of the lessons that you learned back then that you think stick with you today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think one of the things going in, they say, hey, you're going to walk around, you're going to look at this thing, and you're going to, at the time, it wasn't digital now. This was a pencil and a bunch of cards, about 400 of them. And you're flipping them as you're walking. And I went out with a guy for a couple of days at the training. And I remember the first time on my own, I think quitting time was at 4:30, but meter readers always got done like about when you were good enough, about half a day.
Mm-hmm.
That first day I was out there in the rain till about 5:30 in the evening, probably breaking some rules, but what I'm thinking is I'm not coming back with meters unread, and this and that. So what, early on I say, things are harder than they seem sometimes. And, but I had perseverance. I wanted to do a good job. I still was just thinking small. I wasn't thinking about what would I be next. But I eventually got good and I could read them really efficient. But one of the things I think about now, sitting in the seat I sit in and being where I was then, it's a pretty good distance to the customer sometimes. And, man, I pull up, walk up on a house, I could smell the chicken cooking.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. I could hear what was on the TV.
Yeah.
I'm in the basement sometimes. I know the pipes are leaking. I mean, you just that intimate relationship with thousands of customers that we serve. That was my role. And I don't want to go back out and start reading meters again, but I do miss that connectivity to the customer. Not just hearing, what their struggles are sometimes from the call center on the phone, but seeing it, smelling it, feeling it, and really understanding that, some folks, are struggling. Some folks are living well, but there's a mosaic of conditions that the people we serve, have to deal with every day.
Wow. I mean, man, that is, you're talking about knowing your customer. You experienced that, as you mentioned, firsthand. So it certainly informs you, keeps you informed, I would say, for where you are now. So we walked through your journey. You started as a meter reader. Your next step was then a journeyman. What motivated that transition from meter reader to journeyman?
Were you going to get me jumped on the street by saying I went from meter reader to journeyman?
Oh, me? Well,
I had to put some work in.
I know you had to put some work in.
I had to be an apprentice for 4 years. And,
Yeah.
And, just walking into the office, I said, okay, this is nice. And you get off early because once you finish, you were done. But that's when I really learned that it really wasn't about, financial motivation all the way. Because I did say, hey, I want to have a larger role in the organization. And then as I walk by that bid sheet, like I say, everyone thinking now screens, digital, this stuff was all clamped on clipboards. And you're walking by and you see apprentice lineman, maybe it was $15 an hour. I was like, whoa, okay, where do you sign? So I signed up, became an apprentice, and it really, again, was financial. But I did want to do something that I thought, I could contribute at a higher level to the organization. So I did the 4-year apprenticeship, IBEW, Local 309, topped out a bit early. And so people will tell you, any line worker who's going through apprenticeship will tell you it's a lot of challenges. It's tough. It's probably even tougher then than it is now because it's probably a lot more physical and climbing every day and all of that. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just had some of the best times out there working, traveling the country, working in other jurisdictions on storms. And so my apprenticeship taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of hard work. And I'll tell you one thing that I learned, and I got this from one of the union brothers when I was working as a line worker, is that we used to say, hey, if we can't do it, don't call the hall because there's no one behind us. And it gave me that attitude that I'm in a position where I am the last resort. I have to be the solution. I can't walk away.
Right.
If we leave, then these folks don't have what they need. And so it keeps you creative. It keeps you looking for different solutions. You know, we hung poles off of trees, using trees.
Wow.
We carry things in. It's just the creativity that I learned out there trying to rebuild the grid after storms still sticks with me today.
Wow. So so you talked about so your early mentors, certainly you maybe in retrospect you look back and said, wow, that was a mentor, and it sounds like you mentioned some of your union brothers, your peers being out there with them. Maybe probably a lot of mutual mentorship I'm sure happened. Who are some of those mentors that help you look more into your future, or maybe perhaps challenge you on some areas that you needed to develop for your career?
Yeah, no, I tell you what. I don't know who remembers like All in the Family, the TV series All in the Family, and you think about people are products of their time, right?
Mm.
Those are white guys, older white guy, and he's a product of his time, so he's probably got some baked in racism without the malicious intent piece. You know, it's just you kind of and I remember that, and you know I was banging butt heads with him, and it was rebellious. And I worked on his crew. I didn't really like working on his crew, but over time, you know, that seemed to change. And I remember there was a point in time when one of a new superintendent came in and told me I should write on one of the supervisor jobs. And I ended up writing on the supervisor job and becoming a supervisor. But after some discussion with the superintendent later, I said, why did you think I should write on the supervisor job? So that same guy,
mm-hmm.
he told him, if you want a good supervisor, Patrick's your guy.
Mm.
You know, and so that made me understand the complexity of the complexity of the world and the imperfections in people.
Mm.
You know, everyone's not, like even me, you know, there's a lot of stuff I didn't do right, I didn't do wrong. And even this guy, you know, he had a side of him that, you know, I can't reconcile. But even with all of that, I think what I choose to believe is excellence of performance can supersede all man-made prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we landed, that he saw I worked hard, I did my best, you know, I gave good product. And I like to think I might have changed him a little bit, you know. So, and you know, and I know I did actually, because he was a big high school football fan, and after he retired, I would see him at one of the local high school games, and he would always ask me to come over there, sit with him, and talk. You know, so it's, you know, it's not where we started, LaRon.
Yeah.
You know, and but it's where we ended, not only as a trained journeyman and even ultimately a supervisor, but as people.
Yeah.
I think we both got better as people.
Yeah, for sure. So then when it was something you shared when we talked yesterday, you mentioned that if you're driving, that if you lift, is it 1/4 of an inch, you can see further?
Yeah, so this is it's not proprietary to me. It just happens to have my name. It's called Smith System. It's something that we believe in at Ameren, and we train our folks in what they call Smith System. And one of the principles is like 5 principles. So if folks Google this and look it up, I just think, I'm not endorsing anything, but I've gotten better because of it. And so what I'll say is one of the principles is aim high. And they talk about if you're driving, if you raise your head, just raise your chin 1/4 inch, you can just see, a mile further down the road.
Mm.
And so metaphorically, I think you're referring to when we were talking about some of these mentors encouraged me metaphorically to just kind of raise my head and look further down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Not just looking in that spot to payday.
Yeah.
That's the first spot we all look at back there, right?
Yeah.
We're all looking to every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? But, look further down the road. Okay, what will you do when you're 28, when you're 35, when you're 40, when you're 45? And I really started thinking about that. And that's when I really, because when I came to work at Union Electric as a meter reader, I went back into school, but I was hit or miss. And that's when I really said, let me graduate and get the credentials I need to give me the options to be able to do other things. I love being a line worker, but let me give myself other options.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of what that was about.
So you know, I've seen this even in my career. People are very sometimes overachievers, as if they are trying to, you know, compete for the, you know, with the next person, or trying to fast pace or fast track everything in their career. But it sounds, hearing you in your journey, it sounds like there was a great amount of patience, as well as a lot of learning, if you will, a lot of learning. And so how important is that to you even today, just to remain a learner, as well as patiently learn? I guess I'll put it that way. Because as a mentee, as a protege, again, oftentimes we again, I've seen a lot of people feel like they need to, you know, I even was like that early in my career, felt like I needed to know everything, or feel like I wanted to know this great amount of information today, not realizing that there's a process, and there's a benefit to the process of patiently learning what it is that you need to. So would you say it's similar for your journey, or rather those are, I would say, attributes that have remained in your journey, that being patient as well as learning, or remaining a sponge in the industry?
Yeah, I think yeah, being patient is a virtue for sure, and it has its place, and it also has its place to, you know, maybe in some cases, you know, operate with more of a sense of urgency. And I think for me, you know, I still haven't embarked on at that time coming up on what I thought was a framework. I think I was riding my journey and not driving on my journey. I was riding, and even when I talk about going from meter reader to line worker, you know, I was a meter reader maybe 18 months, and I told you I saw the bid, and I wanted, and I put my name, and I had enough seniority, and so they say, yeah, okay, you got, in 3 weeks you'll do this. You need to buy these things, and it was climbing tools, gaps, and belt hooks, all that stuff that you need, a few hand tools, and you know, they say, and it was pretty expensive, but and somebody told me, but there's a guy named Harry who's retiring, and he's a lineman, and he's selling everything out of his locker for $25. You know, and you know, $25 even then wasn't crazy amount, but so I go back to being 8 years old in East St. Louis, power outage, and it's hard to be what you can't see. I had never in my life ever, at 8 years old, you know, had ever seen a line worker, ever. So they pull in the back of our house. We had a chain link fence, and guy goes up in the bucket, and man, I'm sitting in the kitchen window. You know, you can get from one end of my house and the other in 3 seconds. You know, it's a small house. Yeah. And I'm just watching these two guys for about maybe close to 90 minutes. And they're working up there and doing stuff, and then, you know, I see the wire shaking to the house and this and that, and then all of a sudden the power comes on. And I'm sat and stared at this man for 90 minutes. And I was like, man, I'd never seen anything like that. And I never seen anybody go up, and I didn't know the equipment was like that. I just didn't know. And, you know, people might find that hard to believe, but it just didn't have that exposure. So now fast forward to my $25 deal. And so, you know, I walk over to where the linemen are at. You know, I'm a meter reader. You don't often go over there. And I find Harry. And I say, hey, excuse me, sir, I hear you're selling all of your equipment for $25. And Harry turns around. And Harry is the man that was in my backyard some 16 years ago.
Wow.
Putting that service up.
Wow.
Instantly looked at him and was just, dang, this is the dude that was in my yard. So the person that I first saw do the work that undoubtedly lit some type of flame in me was the person whose tools I used to enter the trade more than a decade later.
Wow.
Yeah. And I never forgot that. So what I say is, like, you know, I don't know so much how much orchestration I've done, as I've just been in some situations, the right place in the right time, and benefited from, from some fortune and from some mentors and things of that nature. In some way, Harry was an informal mentor. He never spoke to me that day while he was doing that work.
Right.
But in another way, he did.
That's right. That's right. And he was an inspiration for sure, without words, right? But you were able to see and observe what he was doing. And
but it's hard to be what you can't see. I do believe that.
Absolutely.
It's not impossible, but it is hard.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm sure when you saw those lights come on too, and I know there was an impact, too. And the work he's doing is what just made the lights come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's huge. When you think about there's been this conversation. I'll never forget hearing the question or the comment about the energy industry. Some people say the energy industry being sexy or what, and I'm sure you've heard that as well. It sounds like your entry or what your motivation early on was definitely the money, as you referred to a few times. But when you consider your progression and the way your career has moved, how has that motivation changed, or how has your measure of success for your career changed in terms of seeing money as what's sexy versus what? So what is it that draw or motivates you now in the roles that you've taken and that you still have, or that you have rather currently today?
I think my relationship with energy now is, and I'm a curious person, and I try to understand, and to help it make sense, as I operate the business, and you engage with customers and large and small.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've come to believe is that, and I have electric and natural gas, that our teams lead. But I come to believe that people do not use electricity. People do not use electric gas. People use things that use electricity. And things that use natural gas.
Absolutely.
So until those things don't work, you're not even thinking about me. So that's kind of the trigger. And so you're really kind of an afterthought. And ever since you've been tall enough, everyone, if whoever's listening, you've been tall enough to reach that switch on the wall that you saw your mama or daddy do, and you say, hey, if I push it up, that light will come on. Probably got in trouble for turning it on and off too much.
Mm-hmm.
You understood that, you grew up with that, and it becomes a sense of, hey, this is a right. I have a right to have power, to have energy.
Wow.
And so I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that. So that drives complexity now. And, when, you say, hey, this is really a business. It's a business, and it takes a lot. It's complex. It takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of work that's never seen. Never seen. You think about it. You people can go a long time and not ever see folks doing electric work.
Sure.
You're putting it here. It's underground in different places. And it's unlike a road, which is critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
By all means, electric and gas are critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And roads and bridges are critical infrastructure. But on your drive back home to Kansas City, you're going to cross a lot of roads. You're going to drive a lot of roads. You're going to drive across some bridges. And you can call me back and tell me the condition of all of those on your way home. And you can tell me, hey, they need to invest in that.
Mm-hmm.
They need to invest in this road. They need to do more in this road. Or where you see it being done, you can say, yeah, that's good because this is smoother.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll drive past 10,000 poles on your way home and not have one sense of, is it working, or is it about to fail? Does it need to work, or is it 50 or 60 years old?
Yeah.
And so that's the complexity I think we deal with, but we can anchor into that. You got to understand that's why people think that, and now how to try to appeal to a value proposition and what it really takes to make sure that people have energy to do the things they need to power the quality of their lives for all the other things that are important to them.
Sure. So it's beyond, you see the impact, in other words, of the work that you do. And at what point did you see that, or I would say experience that transition for seeing the value in I know you mentioned some of it in your journeyman work and so forth, but in your senior leadership roles, how has that shaped how you move and really how you take the next, or have you have taken the next role throughout your journey?
Yeah, I think you always get paid a couple more dollars for growing up, and that's good. That's not a bad thing. But I think later on I became focused on being able to contribute in a more meaningful way. And it's not that like my job is more important than another job in the company, but you do have more authority to influence. And and I remember being a apprentice, and I remember thinking I had some good ideas. And, I don't know if you know how that works. You got to sit on that one until somebody asks you. But I always thought, I would love to be in a situation to maybe engage and do ideas. I coach, my passion, as you saw, was AAU basketball. Mm-hmm. When I first started coaching at a school, I went and bought a book and then of plays, my first time coaching for real. And I opened it and I looked at it, and there was a bunch of diagrams of different plays. And I'm going to tell you what struck me about the book that changed my perspective. The plays were they were like in the book, but they were like drawn in pencil, like. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wait a minute, somebody just came up with these. I sat it down, I just said, hey, I can come up with my own stuff. And it made me think about, we get credence to things as just like natural law or is this and that. And we don't ever think sometimes about, hey, you might be the one that the system's been waiting for this idea, or doing it this way, or trying that. And that gave me a lot more courage to try my idea. So that really brings me a lot of fulfillment for trying my ideas. And again, I came up through the system. I've been on the other side of disconnect notices. I mean, we had financial problems here every now and then at home with my mom and dad, and every now and then, hey, you get it. So I've seen all of that. I still have family members who have to deal with that. So how dare me to be in this role and distance myself from the lived experience of some of the people that really need us. So I think that shapes how I make decisions, and not only how but why I make decisions, and I love being in a position to do what I'm doing today.
Man, that's powerful. Right. That is powerful. And so you've gone through, man, I just still love your entry story. I love all your story, really, but I'm now you're in a position where you manage several leaders and who also have a certain amount of influence throughout the organization, throughout the industry, and so forth. What is your approach to mentoring the leaders that you work with? Mm-hmm. What is your approach to mentoring them today, and what are some of the values that you like to pour into them in your role now?
I'll tell you one thing, and I think there's a couple of things. Like I think Ronald Reagan might have coined this. Trust but verify. Yeah. Operate with trust, but I'm accountable for a lot. So hey, I'm gonna have to verify some things, and I just think that's good business. Another one of the things I think President Obama said is he was talking about being in rooms where you just had a room full of super important people, and you sit in there for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you realize, and I'm gonna quote him, they ain't all that. I'm not knocking him. Because I had that experience, man. I'll tell you what, my superintendent, I was a supervisor. He said, hey, I got to go on vacation. I need you to go to this superintendent's meeting. Man, I lost sleep. Because I'm like, oh, man, I got to go meet with the superintendents and be in a meeting with all, those big brains. And I get in a meeting, and we're in there about 10 minutes, and they're arguing about some stuff, man. And I'm just sitting around, looking around the room. I say, you know what, I can do this. So that was one of the things, because you really probably overestimate what it takes to do the next thing.
Yeah,
you do, and I don't know if anyone's done this. I don't know why I would be doing it, but I'm sure someone's taken a set of binoculars and turned them around and looked through the fat end. You know what I'm saying? And what happens? Everything looks way far away.
Yeah.
Well, that's the view that a lot of folks have coming up.
Mm.
And you know what I found out? Just flip those binoculars around. And so my view, when I look back at people who were where I was at, I really see how close they are to me. That distance is not what I thought it was when I was a meter reader, when I was a supervisor. But you got those binoculars and you're looking and you say, oh man, that director job, that VP job, oh, that's way out there. I could never do that. And now, sitting in this role today, looking through them the right way, I say, no. I tell people, hey, you're not far from me. If this is something you aspire to do, or other roles. There's only one of these roles in this segment, but there's other roles.
Right.
And so, and I think just giving people courage, because here's what I believe, and I don't know who told me this. What you think about yourself directly correlates to what you're willing to do for yourself.
Yeah.
You see the kids out here doing nonsense and doing crazy, stupid things, and at the end of the day, they don't think much of themselves. They don't think they had a chance of this and that. But when people feel that, hey, I might be somebody, or I have a shot, then you make different choices.
Yeah. So, I think that's definitely connected back to what you see too, right? And being exposed to, to things such as, being a lineman and so forth. They need to see a lot more, right? So, and I'm sure we could talk about that all day as well. And I know because you work with youth. You work with the youth of coaching for basketball.
Yes, sir.
I know part of your heart and passion is to make sure that they are able to see a good example of what they can be, right? And so, but you're right though, with that proverb, and I certainly would say it's true. when you think of bringing in talent to the industry or retaining talent, what is your view, or what is important? What the utility industry, looking at all the demand and everything that is increasing, and the labor shortages, and I mean there are compounding challenges that are facing the industry right now. What would be your advice to utility leaders, whether they sit in a similar role as yours or just leadership in general? What would be your advice to them on what we need to be doing as leaders to make sure that we are able to retain the people to continue to push the industry forward?
That's a challenge in a lot of different spaces, a lot of different industries, and I can't help but often fall back into the sports arena or the basketball arena, and I think about some of the coaches I've studied, and I think about hearing coaches, give interviews and talk about, how they approach things with different players coming in, and even great legendary coaches like Coach K from Duke and others. And I remember one time him saying, his willingness to adjust his framework, adjust his design, adjust his scheme for whatever wave or whatever type of kid was coming in. And I think in the energy industry, we're like, man, they don't want to work. We got, we're holding them. I mean, I think we have to really be open to, okay, you can't apply, what this and that. Work ethic now, I mean, it might need to be updated. What does work ethic mean now versus, I mean, back when everything was heavy and steel and you had to bang, and work ethic then was, just physical exertion.
Mm-hmm.
But is that still today's work ethic?
Mm.
And then I don't have to answer, but that's a question that you need to answer when you think about, oh, these kids don't want to do this and that. Well, I think it's incumbent upon, us as companies, as entities, as firms to say, okay, wait a minute, no, like Coach K, how do I adjust, my system, my framework, and get the outputs I need, but do it in a way that's attractive to you and that optimizes your assets.
Mm.
So that's some of the things I think we've been slow to make those type of migrations and all of that. And I think the other thing is, you just got to get folks from everywhere, and that's one thing about ball. Like Dennis Rodman, I can't even call the name of his school. Now Dennis is a different type of dude.
Right.
But he's one of the 50 greats.
Yeah.
And he went to some school, probably 10 people on the call wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so all I'm saying is, talent can come from a lot of different places.
Mm.
And I think, I know this has been, DEIs are like a trigger thing and this and that. I mean, just back up out of that and just think about, hey, if I was coaching a team and I just want to try to get the best, people come from all different places. Sometimes a person might need this and this person needs this, but I think it's still figuring out ways to extract talent from all environments is going to be, business critical.
Yeah.
So we're running out of people. So you got to get people from all environments. It's not about, not about equity. It's not about, just trying to be diverse. And it'll impact that certainly, but it's really trying to have them folks laced up, ready to go, and do the good work to power the quality of life for these people that we serve.
Yeah, you just reminded me of a movie scene. If I'm not mistaken, it's Volcano, and
they had the prisoners.
They had the guy who was and they had him in handcuffs, but they had to move that concrete wall to block the lava and so forth, and they were trying to do it by themselves. They kept trying and they couldn't do it, and the guy said, "Hey, I want to help." So they finally, one of them decided, well, let me get the keys and unlock the handcuffs. And it speaks to your point from all environments, and he was able to help tremendously and make sure that contribute, I should say, tremendously to make sure they put the concrete wall in place to block the lava. So, and how close are we as an industry to considering broader pools or broader environments to bring folk in to help? I mean, just hearing your story. I mean, just and
I'll tell you, like there was a time, and even our company, and I got involved in this. And it's an award sitting over there that I have for doing something about it. But it was at a point where I, we were, I was at a point where I was on the hiring side, and I was looking at, these qualifications that we have out there, I could not be hired here.
Wow.
So, here I am. I'm like I think I was a superintendent at the time and had moved through the organization, been a successful line worker. I said, I couldn't get a job here under these qualifications. And it was, it was a situation where, what the things we were asking, were, might have had a little bit of an adverse impact of folks who just didn't have the opportunity to have those virtues, those attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, so I think the framework is already there. I think we just oscillate back and forth between different perspectives based on, sometimes what's going on in the world. But I think ultimately, it's really about just trying to make sure that we can find the best talent wherever it comes from.
Yeah.
Wherever it comes from, find the best talent.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might not be someone who already has been swinging a hammer in their life, but they sure can if taught the right way.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. I really admire the work and the examples. I mean, you talked about your ideas and being able to bring an impact, and it sounds like there, especially the time that you came up, you weren't able to again let some of your ideas flourish, but God has blessed you to where you are now in leadership positions where your ideas are able to flourish and you're able to have a broader impact built on those ideas that were planted in you years ago. So that's for me. I know for sure it's inspiring, it's motivating for me, and I hope that it's motivating for all who are listening and considering whatever those next steps are. Because like you mentioned earlier, man, I know exactly what you mean when you talk about flipping those binoculars on whatever it is. We end up talking ourselves out of a lot of.
Yeah, it's closer than you think. Just turn the binoculars around.
Yeah.
You're looking in the wrong end.
Yeah. So, and you know, one thing we talked about too is when you consider mentorship and the lessons that you are taught. Let me say taught. The most important thing is listening and receiving what's being to being told to you, because if not, you won't move on it, right? And so it's so important to really be, again, a sponge and receive and listen and move on the things that are being encouraged and taught to you. And so I appreciate that. Again, I'm only saying it because, again, I know I'm in a place, even in my career. I mean, I don't want to time me or you necessarily, but I'm certainly behind you in my career. But I can certainly I will believe, benefit from your journey and the things that you've even shared on today. So appreciate that.
No, hey.
So Ron. Yeah, Ron, this is Mike. Let me go ahead and interject a couple of questions here as we got a few minutes left. And Ron, don't discount what you've done at Burns & McDonnell in mentoring young men and women. I know for a fact that you have your own proteges at Burns & Mac. So credit to you as well. What a wonderful story, Patrick. Okay, two questions from the audience. They're pretty related that I wanted to share with you guys as we start to wrap up. And it's about preparing. So you talked about what you're looking for, but these two people are saying, what advice would you give a current PhD student in electrical engineering to position for a successful career? And the other question is very similar. What are the next steps in the power delivery business which we could start to prepare ourselves today? So somebody's actually in the industry today at a big lab, and they want to say, what do we need to do to prepare ourselves? And somebody's getting ready to emerge into our industry with a very high-powered PhD degree. And what do they do? What's your advice to these two young people as to how do they position for success in our industry today?
Yeah, I think, as I answer them, I just wanted to say, hey, thanks. You're first flattering, and I don't want to get the impression that I'm coming up here with a bunch of ideas, but because here's the best thing one of my ideas has done is made someone else have a better idea. And that's what ideas do. They don't always win, but they drive others. But when you think about, like, the PhD gentleman, I would say with the PhD, that's a blessing, man. And I just, hats off to the work. But don't let it deter him or her from saying, hey, I'm going to step back. And because sometimes you might have to go around the block to get where you're going. And especially in these companies, especially energy companies, where there are just so many different type of jobs. And, if you look at linear and say, hey, this and this and this, hey, I got a PhD, I shouldn't do this, I can't do this. Well, maybe don't look at a 5-year plan. And that might involve, dropping back a little bit, like a good quarterback, and then throwing it downfield when you get the opportunities. So I wouldn't discount roles that might not require a PhD, but that you see that can navigate you to some of the spaces that you want. And then coming into the industry, I think, we're just reconciling with the artificial intelligence and what's that going to mean for us. And it's on two fronts. I think we got to look at artificial intelligence, AI, on two fronts. The ability to be more productive and do more, not necessarily displace people, but accelerate benefit. And then, but on the other end, to have the restraint to not waste time with AI and over process. I mean, if I'm sending an email like, Ron, I'll be at your house at 10, and then I write it, then I say, well, let me see what AI says. Well, now I'm already spending more money on, so I think that's a real threat to, especially when it's just a button on the screen, that folks are, can overprocess and using the tool and technology to put a drag on organizations. So I think you have to be cognizant of both fronts. But I think that whole AI integration piece and understanding it and doing it in a safe way is probably what needs to be understood next and most.
Interesting. So, Ron, we're about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. Why don't you take a minute or two to give us a concluding remark, and then invite Patrick to do the same and take a couple of minutes, and we'll wrap it up. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate it. LaRon Evans, what are your thoughts?
Appreciate it, man, Mike. Yeah, again, Patrick, I appreciate this opportunity. I certainly am inspired. I certainly, understand what Mike mentioned about my path and the impact that I've been able to make on others. But I do believe it's all connected as well. So anytime we're able to, continue to learn from the journey of others, to continue to pass wisdom along, is I thrive on that. I love that sort of thing. So I certainly appreciate, again, your journey, this conversation. I'm certainly looking forward to talking to you more on some things. I'm sure we'll be able to connect some more on some things. And I just encourage all who are listening, just be ready to learn. One of my top strengths is learner, and I do think that to continue to navigate wherever you are and wherever you plan on going, you got to be prepared to learn what it is that you need to know to execute and perform in whatever role that you are in or that you will be in. And so yeah, Patrick, what would you give?
First, hey, thanks, man. You've been a wonderful host, and wonderful to talk to. I appreciate your questions, and even more inspired by what you have done and will continue to do. And hey, Mike, glad I met you out there. I think we were in Chicago, and so I appreciate you coming and approaching me and giving me the opportunity to have this conversation among others. And one thing I'll say, some of the things I believe this 100%. I don't think there's a lot I can really tell folks other than what I believe. And because when I can pretty much guarantee that everyone listening, whoever's listening, pretty sharp. You're educated, you're prepared, you've learned some things, and I can say without a doubt that I would trust everyone. Anything they heard from me today or LaRon, that they can make their own decision up. If does this apply to you? Can you help them? But I just love sharing what I believe has helped me, and I trust others will take what they think can help them and leave the rest. But again, I've been fortunate. I came from a good family, a mother and father, my wife. We had a couple kids you saw in there. And I'll leave with this. Most of those decisions that I made that turned out fairly well were made with the aid of a mentor, whether I knew they were a mentor or not. And so really, finding yourself, finding good folks, and trusting in people, and has been important in my life, and I don't think I sit here without. I'm thinking in my head 8, 9, 10 folks who told me, hey, no, don't go left, go right. Don't stop, go forward. And so you think about no one gets anywhere alone, and I'm certainly testifying that I didn't either. So thanks for having me, Mike, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you both, Patrick and LaRon, and what a great conversation. And boy, I would share this with friends. If you have got somebody I would absolutely share this archive. Such a rich content and so many great words that needed to be said. You go to industry meetings, and these are the things that people talk about, but we didn't get into the depth that you guys did today. So thank you very much. And I just want to say, Ron, thanks for guiding this conversation today. Patrick, thank you for sharing your life with us. And thanks to Burns McDonnell. Thanks to the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative. And we appreciate this opportunity to talk to you today. And Jeff, I will hand it back to you.
Yes, thanks everybody for a really great discussion, really inspiring about mentorship and coming up in this industry. But that is all the time that we have for now. For those questions that we didn't have time to answer, we will be getting back to you via email. So that is it for today's webinar. On behalf of T&D World, I'd like to thank Mike and Laron and Patrick for presenting. And thank you to PDI Squared for sponsoring today's event. And thank you to all of you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day.